Great to be doing a podcast with you again. Thank you so much for joining me today.
My pleasure, Jake.
So I'm going to get straight into it. You have written a book since we last had a podcast together, and it's called Mind Decentralized. I really loved it myself, especially with having had a couple of sessions with you as well. It really helped a few things all fall into place. So what does it mean to become masterless?
Oh, straight off the bat.
Yeah, let's go for it.
Well, first of all, I've written a second book, and I'm in the deep in the weeds with the editing with an editor. And what I've come to realize is that first, the Mind Decentralized was kind of all over the place, just how my mind works. It jumps a bit. So if I was being, what I learned, let's say, about that first thing was that you need a fil rouge, as my editor says, that you can follow through. And I think with the book, for some people who are very logical and systems minded, probably were like, huh? Where did that come from? For my brain, it's like, of course, it's like spinning plates. So I have a second book out, and I'll talk about that. So that first one was like my first attempt. Mm-hmm. Mind Decentralized, Becoming Masterless. So fundamentally, becoming masterless is the idea that you don't need anyone. And you can become masterless in a way, like sovereign individual, by adopting Bitcoin, right? But then you have your mind. You go to bed at night and you stare up at the ceiling, or you have nightmares, or you're constantly fearful and worried, or self-sabotaging, or you got addictions. And so I saw just yesterday, actually, someone sort of kind of not reached out to me, but became aware of my work by someone else on Twitter. And he said, I've been in prison. He's open about it, and I think he's a Bitcoin, he's quite high up in a company. And he said, these intrusive thoughts are worse than being in prison. Wow. I thought that was very interesting. So you can be free in your life and have all the money you want, but the master is the mind. So that mind controls you. And there are, we can talk more about that. And so everyone is controlled by their mind. If you say you're not, that's your mind. So to become masterless is to understand the game and understand that there is an authority, which is your mind, and that it's on autopilot. And when you become aware of it, that's the game to play, is to becoming masterless, is to see the master in your mind and then become masterless, as in without a master.
Okay. And I'm remembering now precisely how the invitation for this podcast was given, which is quite fun, in that I have predominantly migrated entirely to Noster. And that in itself is a whole nother subject. But the shout out to Brisket, who I often get interesting conversations with when I'm posting this.
Yeah, me too.
This kind of stuff. He just really thought long and hard about this. And I had if you don't mind, a personal situation which I can share briefly that I think is quite fun to use as a use case, like to use me as a scenario to talk through. But it was around the ownership of emotion. And something I learned having become a parent is that my child is not responsible for my emotions. And actually, what does that look like if you take accountability for that in many areas of your life? And suddenly you start to see emotions are things that actually ultimately you are the person that has to be responsible for your own emotions, and recognize that certain things trigger you, or basically blaming other people for how you feel is not going to end well. And it gets very, very tiring. And I guess I've progressed in terms of how I've learned to use my mind. I definitely do not feel masterless, to use your phrase. And it's great to kind of recognize that actually your mind is in charge, even if you claim that it's not. But I thought that'd be quite a fun thing to work through, is like the accountability of emotion. And I think what I've come to realize is it's a very stoic philosophy that I hadn't really realized was that, if that makes sense. How does that emotional accountability discussion play into the masterless mind?
Okay. There's a few things through a few threads.
Okay.
Firstly, I've gone Noster,
Mm.
full Noster, which was an interesting observation of taking responsibility for where I put my work and
Cool.
not, going against the mainstream social media thing. It was difficult. I like Noster. It's a bit quiet, but hey, I'm kind of putting valuable stuff out there. So if it's valuable, it will propagate. If it's not, then I'll just keep talking to myself. So I like, we could talk about Nostra at some point, but I'm not an expert.
We'll come back to it.
I've got loads of geeky coders around me in Madeira who talk about it. And so to you, taking accountability for your emotions, for me, Stoicism is not a solution. It's just a way to handle and sort of suppress and numb yourself to emotions. So you learn a philosophy to someone else's way, which is there's no freedom there, and you come up with a way to be very stoic, which is probably good in a war situation. That's where it really comes from. And I worked with Stoics, and I had to dismantle it because it builds up this sort of an armor, and they're very good at war. But when it comes to relationships and subtleties of interrelating with people, it can be pretty brutal. So I've had to dismantle very smart people like Stoicism because they can adopt it. But you don't learn about yourself. You're following a philosophy, I think it is. When it comes to accountability, it's understanding the truth. So I always like to keep it very simple. Let's maybe a fighting analogy, which would be good. You can come up with all these fancy styles, but it's really what works. If you attack me, what works? And I don't give a shit about how it looks, what literally works. So we have to look at the wording that you're using. So there's emotions, and you said that you don't want your kids to be responsible for your emotions. Is that what you said?
I believe that we have learned as parents that what feels the most aligned approach to helping them have the best start in life is for us to be able to give them a safe space to be emotional. So
Sure.
to not be coercing them in some way to not say how they feel, to give them the space to be upset, to allow those emotions to be processed. And
yes.
Because of allowing them to have that space, it can be very triggering for us as parents. And sometimes that's because we weren't given that space ourselves. And I'm like, I want to tell them to shut the fuck up.
Okay.
You're not allowed to be that upset. But equally, we're trying hard to give them that. And therefore, it's this idea that, okay, if we do that, like, they can't be made to feel responsible for our emotions.
Yeah. So if we look at the first thing that you're saying and allowing kids to process their emotions, if my 8-year-old, she wants to do something and she can't, it's just not, she can't always get what she wants, and she gets upset and disappointed, or she says, I hate her, or whatever. You can see it. It's absolutely real for her in that moment. It is a massive deal. And so what we watch is, when we allow her to be, we never say, like you, don't scream and don't shout. We allow them to process, and you'll see that it comes out. There's a buildup of energy, and then and they're screaming, and then it goes, and it's that shivering. Yeah. It's shivering you see in animals, right? And then it's gone. If you're British, I'm British, so and I believe you are too, Jake.
Yeah.
We know that it's be good boy. Come on now, don't be boys don't cry, be a good boy, come on. You won't get any tea if you go to bed early. So it's manipulation to try and get the kid to quiet. And that's what we've both been conditioned with, probably. So there's that. So you're doing the right thing. The gold here is when you said, I get angry. I want them to shut the fuck up. So you get triggered, and that's where your responsibility comes in. It is where you understand yourself. So the way I do that is that's the game. I've started calling it the game because it is a game. It is.
Yeah, it is, isn't it?
It is a game. It's you start the game, the only game there is, that is to understand yourself. It's like you go through levels and you find treasures along the way, and there's 5 main gates or levels that I call hamster wheels. That's the game, is to see the game, to see the hamster wheels, see their behavior, and see how it interacts with reality and how you create your reality. There's no woo-woo there. If you just watch very closely through proof of work, you can see your behavior. So you get angry, and it's probably something like, maybe it's not right that your kid's screaming so much, but it's probably because you're unable to do anything. You're unable to calm them down, right? And when you feel unable, and the hamster wheel is the 2 words, and I could explain a little bit more, but there's 2 words to the program. It's a childhood program, so it's very basic. We're all jammed up on one side or the other. And when you experience unableness, when you're unable to get them to stop, it triggers your conditioning that's come down through your parents, and you get angry. When men feel unable, they get angry. Okay. And then what would have happened when you were a little boy is probably you cried, and maybe your dad got angry because he was unable, and he would have shouted. That would have frozen you a little bit. The imprint comes in. And now when your child triggers that tag, boom, it goes, and you act like your parent.
Yeah.
And that's the tag to see. And then when you understand that, and in the moment you see, oh, I feel completely unable, there's that hamster wheel. There's ways to deal with the hamster wheel that I can talk about. I don't want to, but back to you.
We will. I think you've helped me clarify that actually the idea of emotional accountability, it's actually not necessarily Stoic. That the Stoic reference you just highlighted very well is very much that kind of military mindset that is required for wartime. And it's a very helpful way of thinking about certain things. But in this case, we're talking about parenting. It's not wartime.
No.
And that's helped a lot to think about it like that. And that's why I love these podcasts, because they're literally, it's like learning as you go.
Yeah. Just coming back, the Stoicism thing is just my experience. So I just say what my experience is. I have a lot of people around me, especially Bitcoiners, who are Stoic, and I hear the language, I see the results, and I look, and then I get clients in who are Stoics, and I'm like, wow, there's no solution there. You think you can control the mind, which is the mind. And so you get very clever people starting to get into very bad places.
Wow. Okay, and so let's carry on with this vein then. So you mentioned a few things, Rob, that you wanted to continue with, which was the idea of hamster wheels. Let's start with that. So when you mentioned 5, perhaps?
Yeah.
So what's the framework that you take someone through when you're looking?
Okay.
Or even then, Rob, maybe take a step back further than that, if you don't mind. Sorry. And there'll be people who are listening to this that won't have come across your work before. And I guess I'll tee this up with, we had such a cool chat, and I always really resonated with your story because of Chelsea Football Club and growing up in and around London, lots of mates who are Chelsea fans, and Abramovich comes in and the whole thing changes. You've got such a great story about being there for that experience, which I love. But now you work with people on their mindset, essentially. So
Correct.
Maybe a bit of a backstory as to how you got to this point, and then we'll talk about some of those techniques that you use.
Yeah, interestingly enough, I was in my cupboard back there, that cupboard there, and I saw that there's a signed big portrait of when we won the league, signed by John Terry, saying, "Hey Rob, ledger what you do, JT, and
No
it's
way.
in the
Cool.
back of the cupboard, like behind my clothes. And I looked at that and I was like, would I put that on my wall?
Mm.
And it's not me anymore. And so I'm observing it. I'm not making a decision yet. I'm like, it was an achievement. Am I proud of it? I don't. It was It was another person, and I'm not a very. I don't put my status on the walls, but then also it could be that that's one of my biases, and I should put it on the wall, like it's an achievement. I'm not the type of person that really I look for the negative. I'm talking about my behavior, right? So I'm just saying that came up. The JT was the captain of Chelsea at the time. When I was at Chelsea, I became the one thing I think that I've got is this skill of seeing patterns. It's just something I've always liked to look for patterns. And so when I was with players, I'd be able to see patterns in their movement, and I'd be able to go, "Oh, they're locked up in their SI joint at the back," and the physios would go, "Huh?" And they check and they go, "How do you know that?" And I go, "I don't know." And I find it very difficult to express myself. But in seeing the patterns, I went from seeing physical patterns to seeing that players who are more emotionally stressed or stressed were more likely to get injured. And this was in the 90s. And what I started to do was to look, and whenever someone got injured, I try and find, or in other clubs around the world, I try and find a backstory, see if there was any particular instability. Or I remember hearing something about the Australian League where, I don't know if it's true, but players who were tapped to go to another club were more likely to get leg injuries or ankle injuries because they were unstable. And so I started looking at that, and there's a lot of woo-woo stuff online at the time. I read a lot of books. I see that stress has an impact on the physical, and I went that way. I went to start to talk to the players about their non-physical inputs to their physical. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And it culminated in that story that I talk about in Becoming Masters, Mind Decentralized, in that we had a world-class player come in, and I would do this very advanced posturology study that I learned in Paris with Dr. Bernard Brico, where you look at the inputs to the tonic postural system of the body. And I would look at the teeth and the eyes and how they input and scars. It was all very fancy. And this player came in. I had the whole medical team around me, and when the player was on the scales, so he had two scales to see where his weight was shifted, and he was 8 kilos heavier on one leg, which is enormous. And each individual, expert said, "Oh, it's short leg." That was the podiatrist, and the chiropractor said, "Oh, it's the neck," and everyone said their bit. And I remember thinking, because I've been in the closet massively with this work that I was doing, I wasn't telling anyone. And then I said to him, "What's the best sex you've ever had?" My joke is 30 minutes later, he said, "Oh, it was this Romanian chick or something." But I wasn't listening to him. A normal type question in a football club, by the way. So he didn't think anything of it. And I just watched his weight shift, and he went perfectly balanced. And I was like, "Oh my God, I've changed him with the thought." I got him to have like a positive thought. It could have been negative thought. And then I said, "What's the worst day of your life?" to get comparison. And he hit it very quickly. He didn't ask him what it was. He went 9 kilos heavier. So I looked at everyone in the medical team, and they just, this complete cognitive dissonance. Their eyes sort of crossed. They didn't know what just happened. It went completely against their reality. And I walked home that night, and I write in the book and I said, "Oh my God, that something just happened there. I don't understand, but that's where my pathway lies, to be able to access that sort of 1 and 0 code." So that started a journey that brought me to a point sort of 10 years ago of working fully with elite performers and anybody who wanted to work with me on that 1 and 0 code. So I found a way to switch that from a 0 to a 1 to strengthen the energy of the body. And then through looking at myself, I wasn't really changing. And I had a few clients I couldn't change, sort of like deep behaviors. So I was very much insecure and never thought I'd be comfortable in myself. I was constantly thinking I wasn't doing enough. I was fearful, fearful, worried, um, just lacking confidence and these negative, intrusive thoughts. And I couldn't get rid of them with all my techniques. And so I started to dig into observing what they were. And through that very hard work of being very still and watching the thoughts, I saw a pattern. And then I saw the pattern and went, oh my God, that seems to be like 2 words. And then working with my clients, I started to bring the whiteboard, which is here, and I started to hear words. And I said, you keep saying the same opposite words. Do you know that? And they're going, oh, yeah, I do. And I write it out. And then I drew a circle and it built into this model. I was like, you're trying to go up there, but you keep going there, right? And they're like, oh, my God, yeah. And through observing myself, I found 5. There seemed to be 5 patterns. I'm still looking. Maybe there's some more, but I think there are 5. I know. And so when I'm with my clients, I help them identify the pattern, and then I explain why the hamster wheel came about. And in understanding that, I can then say to my clients, you have the whole framework for why you are like this, why it controls your whole life, why you do what you do for a living, why you're with a partner who's the opposite, why you do this, why you have these tendencies, addictions. And now the game starts. You either blame, you either think that life's happening to you, or you play the game, which is you're happening to life based on these 5 main operating systems.
Awesome. What a story. I love it, Rob. Thank you. And so you've teed me up brilliantly, basically. So what are those 5 operating systems that you now take people through?
Okay. So we've mentioned one already, which is like able and unable. Mm-hmm. So for instance, you probably were thinking, why aren't they able to control themselves? Or why are they unable to control themselves? Why aren't I able to stay calm? Why am I unable to not be calm and I lose my shit? Right. So that's one. So there's able and unable. There's right and wrong, which comes up a lot. I saw it come up. And again, you play this game. It's a lifetime game. You just go to different levels. So anyone who says, I'm masterless, that's the mind. So that's where it goes a little bit deeper. So we have right and wrong. We have gain and loss, which is a huge one. We can talk more about it. We have support and letdown. So you're either someone who supports themselves, or you're someone who's a people pleaser and they support everyone else, expecting them to do the same, but you get let down, which is supporting someone. If you don't, it's sort of like you let them down. You literally let them down. And then paying attention to and ignore. So I had clients coming on saying, yeah, my husband, he's not paying attention to everything that I'm doing. He's sort of ignoring, and then I ignore him and I sulk. And then when I first saw that, I was like, I have a lot of clients who talk about, my wife, she doesn't pay attention to how important this Bitcoin is, and she ignores the value. And I kept seeing, so that was an unusual one, paying attention to and ignore, but it comes up a lot. So I think that's the 5 I've said.
And sorry, so just to run back through this, so able, unable, right, wrong, supported, not supported.
Support and let down.
Support and let down. Attention and no attention.
Yeah, paying attention to and ignore. It's kind of the extremes.
Okay, and there was one
more.
And
then gain and loss.
Gain and loss. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
And these are terminologies. So in different languages, it might be slightly different. But
okay. Is there a use case you can think of that helps to identify what someone might come to you with as a problem? And you could walk us through like how you were able to help that person.
Oh, wow. Is there something that's bothering you right now? Do you want to?
Yeah, well, we can do it on myself. Sure.
Yeah,
But what?
I mean, there's so many, and what I usually do is it just goes. I've written about them in the book, some of the case studies. Let me start off by saying with myself, one of the hamster wheels, which was pretty brutal for me, well, gain and loss, because loss is extremely difficult for me. So I had to see that and also open myself up to the right. I didn't say the hamster wheel, you're either jammed up on the left or the right. So any human is either on the right, they're constantly doing their yang. So it's a yang, masculine energy. So they're constantly doing stuff. They're very able. They support themselves. They always think they're right. They pay attention to valuable things. And these people hate being unable, being wrong, being ignored, being unable, and losing or loss. It's a kryptonite. So they usually have addictions, which gets them out of the hamster wheel, their mind, but then they feel unable to control it. So the wheel is always balanced. That's another key principle. You think you can control by being able, like what do we the philosophy? What were we talking about?
Stoicism we were talking about.
Stoicism. Yeah, you've got to be there, but you're going to get absolutely smashed to the left. That's the nature of the game. You have to see the yin and the yang and the yin always is always balanced by life. So the more you jam up there, the more you're going to be hit here. You'll get cancer, like the extremes of cancer, manic depression, disabled for the people on the right. For the lefties, like myself, is you're actually safe feeling unable, loss, ignored, unconsciously. You're safe there. You spend all your time trying to be as able as possible, but you support others to be valuable, and you keep getting exhausted and rolling back to feeling unable. So I've gone from someone who was extremely unable, frightened, always thinking I've done something wrong, constant feeling of not worthy. Even when I was on the bus with the cup for Chelsea back in the day, even when I was given the most amount of space at Chelsea's new training ground. I was the top guy, head of strength and conditioning. I felt completely insecure, completely. And so in understanding that, and now playing the game for several years, and when I get triggered, I know that it's within me and it's nothing to do with out there, and that's liberating. And then I can dissolve the trigger. So, for instance, this morning, and this might sound little, but our dishwasher packed in and we rent, so I have to get in touch with the landlord, and I felt that I've done something wrong and that I'll annoy him. And I observed that. I knew which hamster wheel it was, right or wrong. And I know who developed and created this operating system is little Rob when he was 3 or 4. And so I immediately go, it's okay, it's cool. I know the game. So instantly that dissolved, and I could go back to being present, and I logically message him and say, the dishwashers. Yeah. So there's the freedom. And so it's completely transformed me. And I've gone from someone who was completely fixed on being famous and achievement because I felt worthless, which is the drive for everyone, by the way, to achieve when you look at it deeply, and to try and be valuable in the eyes of others because I'm not lovable, which is the deep play, is that we're all trying to get love, connection, belonging, which are the needs that we didn't get in childhood, which created the hamster wheel. So that valuable, constant drive to be valuable and famous and important to others has completely died. That hamster wheel has no more energy. So now it took me over a couple of years, like, oh, who am I? What do I enjoy? Because I spent my whole life thinking I enjoy being famous. or being important. And that's an illusion. That's the game. When you step out, when you start to dissolve these and start to move, say, up the levels in the game, you become very still. And out of that stillness, ironically, you actually achieve more. And there's the Taoist principle of non-doing, or Buddha. If you, another, sorry to jump, if
go.
yeah, first principles of the mind, it shouldn't be everyone doing different things. It should be one truth. So for me, if you want to go into religion, it makes you feel better and it takes away uncertainty. But if you observe your mind, the religion's not going to help you to observe your mind. So I don't need religion to tell me how to be good or that I'll go to heaven, and that's not. I'm interested in the truth. And when you look at the truth, so Buddha, I saw after I found my hamster wheel, he talked about a squirrel cage. I was like, what? And squirrel cage is, the more you try and reach the zenith, the more you reach the nadir, which is a hamster wheel. But maybe they don't have hamsters in, Thailand or where he was from. But he spent years sitting under a tree, supposedly, and just observing his mind. And he said, it's just this, it's that. All you have to do is observe that, and you'll see the game, is my way of looking at it. So he said that, and then he said, don't worship me. And then everyone did in this complex, centralized, one of the least centralized religions, the least dogmatic, but they, there's all these paths. You've got to follow this pathway to be enlightened. It's just noise. The signal is that one thing. Ho'oponopono, a Hawaiian healing system, which I really liked, because when I saw one of the guys who teaches it around the world, and everyone stood up and went, oh, I've got this problem and that. And he just went, I love you, thank you, please forgive me, something else. I always forget one of them. There's 4 things he said. And he kind of tipped his hat. And I was like, what's he doing? And if he has a thought, what he does is, I'm sorry, please forgive me, I love you, thank you. I think it's those 4 to the thought, nothing more. And so what he's doing, he's observing it, he's seeing what it is. And so everyone goes, yeah, but what if, I do this? And he doesn't even go where the thought goes. He just says, I love you, thank you, please forgive me, I'm sorry. And I thought, wow. And he supposedly was working in a mental institute or something, and he healed loads of people. Like people got better, because it's a decentralized mind. It is the idea that the mind is this separate entity that is constantly spitting out fearful thoughts. His conditioned mind through centuries of conditioning. And the game is to decentralize yourself and observe it and not give it any more energy. And that, you look at most, if something is, for me, if it gets results, it's going to come down to basic principles. Jiu-jitsu, take someone down. Why? Well, because they can hit you in the face and generate force. There's a truth there. Okay, what about if they're on the hips? They can still hit you. So put them flat on their back. And then there are, cover their shoulders and hips. Why? Because then they can't generate force. And then you snap, you break something, or you strangle. So there are principles to things. And with understanding the mind, everyone can understand this. So, Jake, I've just further down the road. I've just been playing longer, but you play the game now. The game's there, you start. You either start or you don't. Yeah.
And I can start from right now, which is why it's so fun. It's like, again, the power of podcasting. It's just an incredible thing. But the conversations that I have are such high quality, and in some ways, each one is like a key to a lockbox for additional wisdom. And the conversation I recorded earlier today was with my homeopath, an absolutely excellent conversation I had with Sarah. all about the backstory of like how homeopathy came around and how it's interesting. And here I am now speaking with you about how we can play around with how we think and therefore how we think with ourselves. I think that's such a key point, right? It's like, okay, at least what I'm hearing is you can use the tool of observation to like basically adopt a more sophisticated mindset.
Yeah, we have to be careful with these words.
Please tell me where I've got to be careful.
Adopting a tool, adopting a tool set, or adopting a new sophisticated way of thinking. There's no thinking. It's when you understand the truth, you realize that mind is just constantly there. So you can watch it and there's nothing more. You can watch it and try and understand it. And the only way for you to be free from the mind is to observe it by non-doing. So it's not, I suppose you could call it a tool.
Classic. No, it's like I'm wrapping it up like a Christmas present and making it sound cool.
Yeah. The game is the truth. It's like I say to my clients, can you see that you create your reality? And now it's a mining or an unmining. It's a mining of your mind. And so when you step, and it's a 1 and a 0, you either do it or you don't. So you're either present or you're in the future or the past. And here we're getting into, it's just, that's the truth. So, and homeopathy, awesome. And when you start to realize that these hamster wheels are the cause of, and I'll just take you through it. They stress you. They spit out emotions and fear. They're based on fear, and so they choose. The hamster wheels are constantly going, and they stress us. All our stress comes from the hamster wheels. So when you start to see the hamster wheels, your stress dissipates. The way the hamster wheels stress you, they choose through your minerals. Your magnesium burn rate goes up. A minerally based battery like the electric cars, you start to burn through your minerals. You get mineral dysregulation. And that's when you start to absorb more iron being the element, the most abundant element in the universe. And it is attracted to fear. Now you start seeing that the meridians and the energy pathways of your body start to become dysregulated by the thoughts. So the reason why I'm bringing this up is your battery can affect how much energy you have to be able to mine your mind. And so there are several factors that have come into play in our environments that has depleted the amount of minerals in our foods, in the soil. So we have antibiotics, which affects iron regulation. They started to add iron filings to the food in the 1940s in UK and America. Maybe I don't know if it was Australia. There was some other place, but it's everywhere. If you look in cereals, it's enriched with iron filings. And that rusts us. So again, I'm going to very basics is when you have iron dysregulation, Professor Douglas Kell at University of Manchester, anyone can look, and I posted on Noster something he was saying. He's a brilliant scientist, Sir Douglas Kell. He states he believes in his team that all chronic inflammatory disease is caused by iron dysregulation.
Wow.
Yeah. And so then you realize that everything in the mainstream is saying that iron's good, you need to supplement with it. And copper, which is the general in Chinese medicine of iron, so it's the general to iron being the soldier, is being collated by Roundup, pesticides, antibiotics. And so we have this dysregulation of iron. And so that homeopathy or mineral salts is a subtle way of remineralizing the body and bringing balance, to the frequencies of the body. So my point being, you have to observe, and then you have to look after the battery. So I go in the sun every day because that charges my battery. I get my feet connected, it charges my battery. And the food that I eat is animal based. with my eye very much on getting enough magnesium, which I supplement with. It's not in the food supply enough anymore, and also a copper. So, you know, so I look at it like a battery, and it's just so I was for 10 years I was taking testosterone replacement therapy. I might have said it on my last. I
Well,
started to eat this way, understand the science of this iron dysregulation, how it fit with the hamster wheels, and then I started to replenish my minerals, and I came off testosterone 6 months ago with nothing, and I put on like 4 kilos, but my strength is higher than it was on testosterone.
wow.
Yeah, so I
Interesting.
realize now that hormonal therapy is downstream from minerals,
Hmm.
and upstream from minerals is hamster wheels.
And so there's that blend between your physical health and your mental health, and they
Yes.
are obviously dovetailing very well. And
Yep.
also, what I love hearing is you mentioned the phrase proof of work. The ability to test these things on yourself
Yep.
is such a compelling thing. So I can come to you and I say, Rob, what worked for you? And you go, well, here's the deal, mate. I tried all this stuff and
Yep.
here's where I'm at today. I would recommend trying this, see how you get on.
Yep.
Um, wow.
It's
And
like
that's,
orange pilling though.
yeah,
Like you can't orange pill. You can't, like we talk about orange pilling people. I've orange pilled lots of people, but it's only when they're ready.
yes,
And there's a guy here who does our organic eggs and food. He brings them to our door. He's amazing. He cares just about getting the highest quality food for people at the minimum price. It's wonderful. He doesn't care about making a profit. He just wants to nourish people. So when I tell him, I said yesterday, Bruno, your eggs are amazing. And he was like a little boy, is such a lovely guy. And I've tried to orange pill him, but he's so tired and exhausted. He's like, oh, I can't think about changing.
yes.
And
Well,
so if you're stressed, then you won't have the battery to start to take on. And so most people come to me, if they're a righty, they come to me when they have cancer, depression, they're going to lose their family, their business. They come to me when they're really in the shit. So the pain is so bad that they would rather feel unable in front of me than experience their reality. Yeah. And the lefties come to me all the time because their life is shit. Not shit, but, like they're struggling and they want to work on it. But the righties don't like to feel unable, so they don't book sessions.
mm, interesting. And it's making me think of my mother-in-law, shout out to Suze, wherever she is, who has been on a breast cancer journey for the last, gosh, my second daughter was just born when we found out about it. So 2 and a bit years. And I think it would be fair to say that one of the biggest lessons she's got from that is the power of emotions when it comes to inflammation and when it comes to disease.
Yeah.
And I couldn't say which side of the hamster wheel she would fall on per se, but it's been an extraordinary process for her personally to go through. And maybe I'll get her on the podcast to talk about some of the different treatments that she's used, which are far more holistic than what the traditional system would tell you to go and do, and have been very, very effective. But what I'm intrigued by, Rob, is this idea of people just being knackered, and therefore they can't think about stuff that would really benefit them. Sound money is very, very powerful. Bruno, you should probably have
Yeah.
half a day just to
Yeah.
think about what it might mean if you could own digital gold. And it's very clear to me that the connection between a healthy money and a healthy person is very, very, very strong. So,
Yeah.
what to you is so exciting then about, like, when we last did it was Bitcoin with Jake, and I was focused exclusively on Bitcoin, and now I'm much more kind of broad as to what I'm going to go out and talk about on my
Nice.
podcast. But
Nice.
um, you said some things that I remember so clearly about the fact that, like, first of all, you mentioned today about patterns and recognizing patterns, and you'd come across a friend who was a professional poker player or something, and they told you about going all in on Bitcoin, and you were like,
Yeah.
I'm in on that thing too.
Yeah.
And so I'm just intrigued as to how how you've maybe progressed from that point now, and obviously you're based in Madeira, this connection between money and health, and like, how do you see Bitcoiners as healthier than the average person? Like, as one specific question. And do you think that the future is brighter from a health perspective with a better money?
Oh, there's some
There's about
different
5 questions in there. Sorry, Rob. I'm getting carried away.
So if we look at the truth of why Bruno, his behavior is not accepting Bitcoin, is because he is on the left, he supports everyone else, but he doesn't value himself.
Yes. Okay.
So the thermometer is already there. So if you were to tell him, take on this highly valuable thing, he won't take it on. It's impossible. So the impedance of him accepting Bitcoin is an internal value thing. Okay. So if you don't have money, you're struggling financially, it's an internal game. It's a hamster wheel game. Okay. So, and I've worked with a lot of people on flipping that switch. If you're on the right of the hamster wheel, you're usually pretty good at knowing what value is. The poker player told me about Bitcoin. It was, I'd spent the previous few years going all in on understanding what value is, because I didn't understand it. We had a child and I needed to get my shit together. So I read every book on money, and I remember reading Unstoppable or Unbreakable by Anthony Robbins, and he was saying you need 50% of this in stocks and they go up 10% a year. And I'm just like, that mean I didn't understand it. But I spend hours and hours every day listening to every podcast on money and value. And then he said to me, so what I understood was, if I put my energy into it, at some point I will find the answer. I just have to keep understanding that. So when he said, I'm all in on this thing, Bitcoin, instantly I knew that's it. All my hairs went up.
Wow.
And I went bang, all in, rode it up 2017. And when it crashed down, I had already understood it, put in hundreds of hours, that when it was down in the depths, I was buying. And I felt sick. I was like, oh, there's that thing. You should feel sick when blood's in the street, when you're buying. So amazing. And so I've got to the point now that that's 8 years that I keep an eye on the patterns in the main people that I follow. So I see the pattern on Twitter that the group think of most people is panic. I see that. And then I see the signal. I'm always looking for that signal that says, this is a great time to buy. So I always buy the dip. That's just something I've seen that's worked over 8 years. If you look at the pattern, it will tell you. The signal is the pattern. Will it? I'm not. I've read the books on Bitcoin and how it will change the world. That centralized system, I don't want to energize anymore. So I try and do everything I can through Bitcoin. And so as I energize this decentralized system, I've moved on to Nostr. Everything I can, I pay in Bitcoin. Also, at the same time, you could say there's I don't know what the word is, but I do not energize my centralized mind. I observe it, which is, in doing so, I become decentralized. So there's a decentralized mind, which is where we are free. So you can see that with my work and Bitcoin, that's why I've always been bullish on Bitcoin, because it fit my model of reality, that it does everything by doing nothing. He let it go, and it changes everything. With what's happening at the moment with countries now talking about trade, trading with Bitcoin, it was always said it's almost an inevitability because of the nature of this network and the rules and the fundamentals. So I've always I've been fascinated by that, and I see it play out, and I just calmly with my wife, we're working on her project, which is the Unschooling neighborhood here in Madeira. And we attracted some big investors, and we are in the process of buying 500,000 meters squared piece of land. Stunning piece of land. Yeah. And so we will have we're getting building permission for 25 houses. We will have cattle. I'm reading a book about cattle at the moment. I probably won't. Yeah, I probably won't do that. I'll stick to what I know.
But
I'm
someone will
reading
come
about.
and do it.
So yeah, I know. I'm already
Bruno's
connected.
probably got a mate.
No, I got. There's a Bitcoiner in the UK who was brought up on a farm. We've already talked. He's already met the investors. We'll have horse therapy. We have a water, natural springs. And so what do you do? Well, when you invest in Bitcoin, there's no more worries. You don't worry. If I worry, I observe, I play the game, I look the truth, because you create your reality, and your worries and your struggles are an internal game. And then you have energy to put into spending time with your children and building a project, because why not? Why not build a Bitcoin unschooling neighborhood? And Sylvia's done most of the work there, and the amount of people that are interested, it's like you don't have to market it. The meme, let me throw my money at you, just take my money. It is because it's such a wonderful idea.
Wow. And I'm immediately interested and intrigued. The question, I guess, I was trying to draw out, that I asked it about 5 different ways, and we'll get onto your unschooling thing a bit more. But
didn't hit it.
No, that's cool. Is basically an observation I believe I have seen in myself and in others, which you've just highlighted, is that by taking a Bitcoin allocation or going all in on Bitcoin, or however you want to describe it, worries drop away financially. Like you have a better view on the future financially. And that,
100%.
like the Maslow hierarchy of needs, it rises you up, and you're no longer just thinking about how to feed your family every day, but like higher level problems. And so I think it would be fair to say then that the kind of coaching that you've talked through in this conversation is further up that ladder, right? You can start to think about, okay, how do I observe my mind more? And like, does that make us more creative? Does that make us healthier, do you think?
Well, the more you you free yourself, masterless, you become masterless, the more able you are to understand your behaviors of overeating or drinking or smoking or whatever. So 100% unhealthy behaviors are driven by hamster wheels. Okay. Financial struggles is just paraffin on the hamster wheel. So if you have financial worries, it's still an internal game to understand the fear you have. If you keep gaining and then losing, so you do gain, but then you lose, it's usually you're on the right. If you're struggling the whole time to make money, you're on the left. So that's the game you're playing. If you want to change your reality, change the internal environment. So coming to Bitcoiners, if they are on the right, this is my experience, if they're on the right, as in yang dominant, as in they're always doing, they will normally consume too much alcohol, marijuana, possibly smoke. They overdrive themselves. They may eat very healthily, but they overwork and they get unhealthy problems. They get problems. If you are jammed up on the right, you will absolutely pull in unable experiences. So for me, it's always just, yes, Bitcoin does that. It takes away the financial thing, but I know a lot of Bitcoiners who have lots of coins and they're super stressed still, or they're very angry, or they're very fearful, and they're constantly, what's going to happen? And they're on Twitter blasting their fears. So it's just an internal game. So Bitcoin, yes, but to be able to hold on to your, yeah, I totally agree with you. Will that stress make you more healthy? 100%. And I'm thankful for the Bitcoin. However, I know people who have lots of coins, and marijuana is a big problem for uh, Bitcoiners and coders who are very, very intelligent, very fast mind. They use marijuana to calm them down. I understand that, but it's because of the mind. So it's not solution.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like a Band-Aid type thing. Gosh, it's
100%.
so interesting. Well, Rob, listen, it's 60 minutes has flown by, and I
Wow.
always find this like we could, go
Yeah.
and do like hours and hours of these, but I tried to keep it to the 60 minutes. If we can, to wrap things up, I'd love to just spend a little more time talking about the unschooling project that you're doing with your wife, because that sounds
Yeah.
like a freaking awesome project that's coming from a place of real passion, and especially as a husband-wife team doing that sounds really cool. Just what was the genesis for it, and can people get involved? What's the plan?
We did a podcast with Ben Wyman
Yep.
yesterday on it. So
Oh,
I got
cool.
Sylvia, what was the genesis? And she said, when we were in the UK and the pressure was on to put Lima at 3 years old into a nursery, which was the best nursery in Surrey, to then go to the best primary school and then to the best secondary school. And I was more in that mode. And she started reading about homeschooling, unschooling. And then the lady said, yeah, you leave your child, and if she cries, you can't come in. She didn't say break the child, but that's what you do. You break the bond. And Sylvia said, I'm not going to do that. That's not how I want to raise my child. I'm not giving her away. And so she started to go into it. She pulled me in. I started to see it. And now we are unschooling, as in no forcing of the child. It doesn't mean we don't make them take their plate to to clear up after them and stuff, but we don't force them based on Lima, you should do Brazilian jiu-jitsu because it's going to be amazing. If she doesn't want to do it, she doesn't do it. And so they learn, they're amazing. I've got two amazing girls. Now we have a neighborhood or community in Madeira of a lot of who are helping with the project. They have a lot of kids. The kids it's going to be different species. We talked about this a little bit, the unschooling kids who are all eating steak, and they're different to kids who go to school. And that's not meant in a judgmental way. And I am criticizing the system, but not the children who go to school. So we got to the point where we were traveling around, and then we met Andre Losha, and he said, oh, you should do that here. We like it here. So Sylvia's very good. She goes up to people in the park and said, are your kids, do they go to school or can they play? And usually the kids in the park in the day don't go to school. And so she's sort of like herding and creates this community. And then she said, why don't
come
we...
with me?
Yeah. Why don't we do this? Why don't we create? And so we came up with the idea of a place to be. It first of all started as a normal bee. And I said, you're going to find that the people who you get coming in, the Bitcoiners you'll want in, and you're going to know if there's an Ethereum holder. Like it's sort of an IQ test or like a cultural test. And she found that she got on really well with Bitcoiners, and other families who were in the fiat system and stuff. It just didn't fit. And so we changed the B to an orange B. Place to be.me. So it's a place to allow children just to be themselves and allow them to self-direct and to not get on the hamster wheels, and to their North Star is what they enjoy, and we get out of the way. And now we were going to do it as a group of Bitcoiner families as founders, and we were going to try and finance it ourselves. It would have been very difficult. And then we were at the Bitcoin Atlantis. We had a stand, and we were so busy. We were the busiest stand. Sylvia and Magda and Alex, some of the founders were all there helping, and it was queues to our stand. And then I saw this guy, and he walked up, who was kind of doing something similar, and his mouth dropped open. He's like, "You guys have done it. You've really," and he said, I want to invest. And it has taken the project to another level. So if you imagine, we'll have horses, cattle, we have a farmer, organic farmer on the land, we'll have 25 cabins, we'll have different types of setups, high end. We went in saying, I said, "Oh, can we have an area I can do lifting weights," to the investor, like ideas. And he said, "Oh yeah, and we'll have volleyball court and swimming pools." And so like there was a lot of money backing it. And it's just so we're starting off, we'll get animals, we barbecue there a lot, beef, a real wooden fire, get the marshmallows out for the kids. And it's a project that is now, we had very good news this week about something to do with the road. So it's such a massive project, but it'll put Madeira on the map worldwide as an unschooling center destination for really for Bitcoiners. It's literally everywhere. So yeah,
epic. And it's so, first of all, like, congratulations on the progress getting that to this point. Like, I'm sure
a lot of
an easy process. Yeah, absolutely. But it's an obvious evolution where, Bitcoin is now 15 years old. More and more and more people have adopted it as their primary form of finance. And with that, you're able to ask fundamental questions of like, well, what do we want? What do we think our children want? Let's ask them what they want.
Yeah.
And if the infrastructure that currently exists is not what's the answer, then you've got to build some new stuff. And that's exactly what you guys are doing.
100%.
It's obviously, it chimes in with this, like, the internet changes everything. Like, you don't need to be in some institution somewhere to get the same information.
No.
Simple as that.
I kind of think, coming back to the health thing, you remember when Bitcoiners get to that point when they can ask that question, that needs energy. To be able to be calm.
Yes, you need the capacity to be able to even think about that. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And is that a privilege? Well, I left football, the fiat world, and I had nothing, but I followed my kind of heart and went with where my passion lay, which was this non-physical stuff. It's taken me many years, like 3 decades, to get to the point now where, I work online, I could retire, but I love what I do. But I had the energy and the balls to do that and go online in 2008. So it took balls and energy. And now I get to the point where I feel a little uncomfortable sometimes, but that's my internal conditioning. Like, it's too easy. Something will go wrong. Like,
well, and it's kind of like when people say to you, "Oh, you got lucky on Bitcoin." It's like, well, actually, I had A, the energy to investigate what it was, B, the luck to even ask the question in the first place, but then C, the balls to actually do it.
Yeah,
and they'll always be, "Oh, you're lucky." It's like,
yeah,
okay, you can call it that if you like, mate.
Yeah,
that's no problem.
But
that's up to you.
That keeps them in their conditioned bubble, the group thing, and that's fine. But they will have to jump. It's whether they jump voluntarily or they're pushed, or they go down.
The system forces them.
The system forces them.
Or the system breakdown, shall we say. Oh, well, Rob, thank you so much. I will certainly be having a look into the unschooling. I've got 3 kids under 5. We're asking these questions like all the time.
Yeah.
And currently based in Byron Bay, as I mentioned just before the call, which is a beautiful part of Australia. But there are some problems that we face here that someone like a Madeira might solve. And the number one is, Bitcoin's a big part of our life. And Portugal has a much kinder tax stance on Bitcoin currently, right? Without the capital gains.
Capital gains at the moment.
Will Australia change? Maybe one day, but not anytime soon. And so it's just that concept, like, go where you're treated best. And
Yeah.
you know,
I think
it's
that's coming. Go where you're treated best. Like it's still. I said I'm gonna put my feet down here. I'm gonna
mm,
build. And
mm,
if Europe falls, Madeira, there's a system in place already. If it doesn't fall, there's so many businesses now accepting Bitcoin here. It's not going to be stoppable. Will it be stoppable? I don't know. But sometimes you just got to force ahead and not worry. A lot of people
yes,
have so many fears they never do anything. We've just gone, fuck it. What if they clamp down and say all Bitcoiners are going to prison? We get on a plane, we're gone.
yes,
We take our Bitcoin with us, right?
yeah,
And the other thing, the unschooling thing, now it's like I've looked into it so much. It is an unfair advantage for the children.
you reckon? Epic.
I know. I don't. It is. I know. I see it. I see all the unschoolers here. It is unbelievable. They talk to adults like they're the same level.
Cool.
Like my 5-year-old talks to adults as the same level, and so they're not conditioned by authority to and ask questions like a child going through
Yeah,
the schooling system. It is an unfair advantage, and our kids play from 8 o'clock in the morning until 10 o'clock at night. And
awesome.
my 8-year-old's now wanting to learn to read. She's teaching herself. My 5-year-old can swim lengths. Um, they play the piano. They speak different languages. It's just their questions are, if you put a school kid next to them, it's just a different. It's better to produce a happy street cleaner this is Summerhill School than a neurotic doctor or CEO. So I work with the people in the hamster wheel that have been conditioned through school, and we are creating a new species, and they will change the world.
Cool.
And their happiness for me is, I'll die for my children, and so for me to have found this most wonderful thing to keep their genius and their bright spark alive, I would, if they clamp down, and they don't here, they would never do that. But if they did, I'm gone. I would leave everything to keep my children unschooled.
Hmm.
It's the greatest thing, and I thank my wife for that.
Yeah, wow. And that's what the missus can open up sometimes. It's just a deep insight like that, and it's like we will die on this hill. This is just an
Sure.
absolute core value. And it's interesting because it's making me reflect on how we left Melbourne to get out of the big city and to move to a place that was, the northern rivers of New South Wales, Australia, renowned for being some of the most freedom-oriented people in the whole of Australia.
Right.
The lockdown stuff that happened a couple of years ago, it looked like heaven. Like basically there was shops that were open with signs up saying it's your choice, it's your choice.
Yeah. Awesome.
Back in the center of Melbourne, it's like you're not allowed out of your house. And if you did leave your house, people would look at you like complete scum. It was crazy. And so here we are. But even on getting here, people who we think might be on a similar page, I don't feel as judged for being in the playground at 10 o'clock on a Tuesday morning with my kids. One,
Right.
that's really cool. But somehow that's actually my baggage rather than my children's.
100%.
But the default is still the local government funded primary school. And they're all wearing uniforms and they're in there from age 5. And it's like, well, actually, hang on. That's not what we're talking. That's not what we're talking about. You might be in a slightly nicer village or whatever, but
they have unschoolers, right, in Byron Bay.
There are definitely people knocking around doing stuff.
They must do,
because
I've got some of my clients that come on and they're like super hippies, but here is just more and more. You remember the guy dancing in the field?
Yeah.
You need the one. And
I've
now,
wanted to come to Madeira for a while, and I also love the sovereign engineering stuff. So for someone like myself that's interested in investing in tech, it's like I'd come and hang out doing that all day, and the kids would go and do organic farming.
They're ridiculous. I was at Sovereign Engineering meetup, and I just listen in. Oh my god! And they're doing this, and have you done? And I don't understand what they're talking about. I was in the park yesterday, and I saw some Bitcoiners, and I went over, and we were just hanging out feet in the grass, and they're talking about Nosta TV, and they set it up so that, and then the other guy's talking about setting up his car so that it's got its own NPub and that you can zap and start you can get access to the keys and you start the engine through Noster. And
Oh my God.
I'm like,
Cool.
what are you talking about? Awesome.
Epic.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
Rob, sorry, we've overrun a little bit, but it's
No worries.
such is the way of good conversation. Final question. If people want to reach out and get in touch, what's the best way for them to do that?
Well, I'd say now through Noster. So you
Okay.
can find me, I think it's Rob Brinded. Support at robbrinded.com if you want to book a session, or I have some people coming in through Noster and DMing me about a session.
Mhm.
And my website, I need to update it. I'm going to probably put the framework and all my work around hamster wheels open source, because I've been looking at all this conversation about open source, and I agree that these are ideas that need to be out there, and not trying to hold on to them to try and get people to pay me, like a value for value. If someone finds it valuable, then they can give me some sats,
Cool. That actually, just one final comment to that is, I've studied digital marketing in quite a lot of detail. And one of the contrarian points I think that hits home most is that people pay for implementation. So by open sourcing what feels like your deepest secrets, actually, they're still going to want to pay you to tell them how to do it.
Yeah.
So
You're
the
right.
advantage is actually like, this is the shit that I know. And so with that, you get like genuine kind of, it's obvious expertise, and you can say, well, I'm the guy that knows this shit. Here's why. And it's like, well,
Yeah.
hang on, teach me and I'll pay you. So I
Yeah.
don't think that's a bad business decision at all, if that's
No,
where
that's
you end.
very cool to know. And you
Yeah.
see Cypher Dean getting into his skit, being like he's brutal. But someone was saying, "Oh, you're worried about someone copywriting and stuff." That just made me start thinking about it. And he's like, "No," and everyone under the post said, "I got your PDF online for free, and then I bought the actual book."
Yes.
So
Yeah. Because they want the physical book in the bookshelf. Cool. All right, Rob. Well, thank you so much for your time today. And I'll link those websites and whatever in
cool.
the show notes. Thank you so
Yeah.
much.
No, thank you, Jake.